What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Mile High Hoops podcast. As always, I am your host, Zach Bai, and as always, I appreciate you spending a sliver of your busy day with me here on the podcast, reacting to an absolute dud of a basketball game in Minnesota, one that if you looked closely and squinted, you could see coming from a mile away. The final score, 110-89. Yes, that score is correct. 89 total points from these Denver Nuggets is one of the lowest totals that you'll see here probably for the rest of the season. If I had to bet on any game that Jokic plays moving forward, it'll be more than 89 points. That's a shockingly low total for this caliber of basketball team, especially offensively, with all the weapons and history of watching this club. This was a game that, by the way, we are not going to spend a ton of time on breaking down the actual game, but I do think there's a couple key factors to take away, big picture, and we will spend some time on it. This was a game that the Denver Nuggets were never in, and I picked the Minnesota Timberwolves to win this basketball game on the air at the end of our show. The drive with myself and Philip Lindsay yesterday had kind of cautioned myself and the listeners throughout, Wednesday afternoon and into the evening, how tough of a matchup this was going to be. And if you look at the history of the matchup, the recent history of this matchup in Minnesota, this has not been a good spot. And, when I say spot, I love the sports gambling aspect of things, and I've been following that since I was 19 or 20 years old, and now I'm 36. And there is such a thing of just a bad spot on the schedule, considering factors when you add them together. And those would be the Nuggets were 4-0. They hadn't stubbed their toe yet. The Timberwolves were 1-2 coming into this thing, having just lost to the Denver Nuggets in the previous year's first round of the playoffs. And when you remember back to that series, it was not a long series, okay? I think it was Nuggets in 5, right? But when you remember the actual substance, possession by possession, quarter by quarter, it was tougher than the final series result would indicate. Same thing with the Lakers series, right? When it was a sweep, but when you're actually there in the trenches and know the temperature of just what it was, it was hard. The sweep was hard. And I know, we've had some fun with that with some of the commentary from national folks talking about that series a year ago. But the Lakers, similarly to the Timberwolves, they are big teams. They have length. They are physical. Just as a part of their DNA. So I think those attributes have a tendency to bother the Denver Nuggets. Now, bother enough to win in a playoff series? No, I don't think so. I don't think that coming into last night. I don't think that coming out of last night. But I think that is one of my larger overarching takeaways, that the who Minnesota is as just a profile is bothersome to Denver. They have size, they're physical, and they played tough. On Wednesday night, they played tough, the Timberwolves did. Give them credit. Give them all the credit. They just simply outplayed Denver. It felt like there was a greater sense of urgency with Minnesota. And you could boil it down to that team just wanted that win a little bit more. It's hard to manufacture a sense of urgency on a night-to-night basis, but this is what Denver's going to get, and we need to understand this. They are now the hunted. They're the champs, right? So you're going to get everyone's best punch every single night, and that's what they got from Minnesota. And Denver's own lackluster effort just simply wasn't going to be enough on the road in Minnesota, a place where they have struggled. Recently, last night, or on Wednesday night, last year, even further out than that, it just hasn't been kind to Denver. And they didn't just lose at Minnesota last year. They played them in January and lost 124-111. All right, so that's a double figures loss. And then it got even worse the next month, almost exactly a month later in February. Minnesota absolutely pounded the Denver Nuggets 128-98. that is, you don't see 30-point losses put on Denver's head, but that's what we saw last year in Minnesota. So this was one of these things, again, saw it coming from a mile away, picked, not that I was, wanting the Denver Nuggets to lose, but picked confidently Minnesota to win on the air. And we saw a game that you could argue was over, well, I don't want to say over, but the early indicator of that game, getting down 9-0, was not a good omen considering the background of all that we're talking about. So I'm watching that game going, uh-oh, even in the first couple minutes. And guys just didn't have it. Guys weren't making shots. The Nuggets shot horribly. And Jamaal, I said, just to talk about the Nuggets getting down 9-0, turned that around, and it was 0 for 9 for Jamaal in the first half, the worst shooting half of basketball that he's had in his career. So we don't even have a precedent to how bad that he struggled. And Murray ended up, hitting some shots later in the game, finished with 14 points. But look at Jokic, for instance, and Jokic, and it felt like that he knew the temperature of the spirit of his team wasn't great, and seemed like he tried to a bit like overcompensate for the lackluster showing from his teammates. And that results in him taking 23 shots and shooting under 500 and having more turnovers than assists. And that's just, you guys know Jokic the way I do. And this guy has been so brilliant. And I'd like to know the record, and I know it hasn't happened too many times, and I don't know what it is, but I'd like to know the Denver Nuggets record when Jokic shoots below 50% and has more turnovers than assists. It's very uncommon, And the assist department, guys, again, just weren't making shots. The Nuggets as a team, let's see if I can pull it here. 6 for 33 from 3. That's 18%. That's just not going to cut it. On a night where Minnesota, on top of this, and this is not why they won, but a heavy contributing factor, Minnesota went to the free throw line 27 times and made 26 of them. It's hard to get better than shooting 96 from the line when you're shooting 25 or more free throws. That's very uncommon. So, and then you talk about the turnovers, 15 turnovers, that led to, let me just double check the points it led to, because I know the Nuggets were, let's see, the points off turnovers. There it is. 22 points off turnovers, guys. That was 10 more for Minnesota than it was for Denver. So 16 turnovers just is too much. It's not used to, we're not used to seeing that. We're just not. Assists in the low 20s is what we saw on Wednesday night. So you add all this up, and this is why, I said I don't want to take too much time of breaking down possession by possession, because just add up the factors here. It was just not Denver's night. It was a dud of a night in a place that has been very unkind against an opponent that was highly motivated, and stylistically, styles make fights. Stylistically, Minnesota is problematic for Denver. And when you don't shoot it well and you turn the ball over and you're just playing generally sloppy and you don't have a great spirit, you're going to lose 8 out of 10 of those games, So it's one of these things where, could you might have got by with that against Utah? Yeah, earlier in the week, yeah. You can, because Utah is not who Minnesota is. But Minnesota is a good basketball team that, again, we know the history going back to Game 82, many years ago. Was that the 18-19 season or 17-18 season, whatever. But they're good, man. They're good. Jaden McDaniels, like really freaking good basketball player. Problematic defender, physical. Gobert, just being Gobert. Deterring shots. A couple blocks, yeah, but just his presence alone. In addition to Towns, and give Cat credit. Cat was a +19, and I thought he was smart, physical, battled through adversity. And then Anthony Edwards, was arguably the best player on the floor, an efficient 8 for 16, 7 for 8 from the free throw line, 24 points, plus 11 when he was out there, finishing quarters with dunks, flying around on the breakaway, knocking down shots. He's got such a bright future. And so, all in all, for me, not a huge deal. It was a spot loss for Denver. I think they'll bounce back. I think that same, how I was saying, the spot is not a good spot. I think that applies to Dallas on Friday evening, who is unbeaten and will come to Denver with the Nuggets coming off a loss. I think that's a great spot for Denver on Friday evening on ESPN, by the way. So everyone will get to watch that game with the 4-1 Nuggets against the 4-0 Dallas Mavericks. I want to check my notes here. Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. once again really struggled. And it's hard to watch. If I'm just being frank, in his 25 minutes, he was 2 for 11. A lot of good looks, just not going down. But the 0 from 5 from 3, you remember opening night, 2 of 9 against the Lakers. He was from 3, 2 of 5 against Memphis from 3, 4 of 7 against Oklahoma City. That was the bright spot. But then 2 of 6 again against Utah, and now 0 of 5. So he's 10 for 32 from three-point range in 5 games, which is a decent sample size. And 4 of them, and 4 of the 5, he just has not shot it well, shooting 31% from 3. So not good, man. Not good. If you want to get excited about, the 5 rebounds in 25 minutes, okay. Not going to do that. 1 block, 1 assist, 1 steal. Wasn't all bad, but not up to expectations. If I'm just being real, and hopefully you're being real with yourself, Michael Porter Jr. just hasn't been very good so far this season, outside of that Oklahoma City game, where it's not even like he shot the cover off the ball there too, but he shot it well. So I'm not, I don't want to get carried away here. But that's something to keep an eye on. That's legitimately something to keep an eye on. Just needs to be better, and we'll leave it there for now. Sample size isn't big enough to get carried away with a reaction, but how you finish the previous season, it does have a tendency to bleed over, and that can be good and bad, right? Nuggets lost the game on Wednesday night. Not really bothered. they're the world champions who were 4-0. Not bothered. But it can go opposite true as well. You get less grace if you're Michael Porter Jr. after shooting 14% in the NBA Finals, and you would think, that wouldn't carry over, but it looks like it has, unfortunately. So how much of that is not playing in the preseason? I don't know. But we're getting to now, 5 games into the year. Let's see what happens on Friday night. I have a feeling he'll shoot it better on Friday night. But if he doesn't, I think we may come back in here on Monday or Tuesday having a more serious conversation. So I think that is mostly going to do it for us here today. I'm just checking the notes in my phone, and you're seeing that if you're watching me on YouTube. Guys, we are on YouTube. You can hit me on my own channel and all the socials, but also on Denver Sports YouTube channel as well. I have here in my notes about Zeke Naji and Peyton Watson not really meeting the moment of physicality and just what Minnesota brings to the table. Zeke did hit his first 3 of the year, top of the key. Love to see it. Followed it up with one of the worst misses you'll see. So, that wasn't the right night for Peyton Watson and Zeke Naji with the toughness and the physicality and the size and length of Minnesota. So, that's mostly what I got here, guys. Just a dud of a night. Rough night for the starters. Not used to seeing Jokic struggle like that. Not used to seeing Jamaal struggle like that. Like I said, we literally don't have a precedent. KCP was a total non-factor. KCP took 4 shots. Aaron Gordon took 3. Was in foul trouble, finished with just 4 points. Didn't have a shot at the rim or a make at the rim until very late. I think think it was the fourth quarter. And you remember what it looked like against Utah. He's just flying around, and I don't know if he had 4, 5, 6 dunks, whatever it was, total opposite there in that dud of a game in Minnesota. But a chance to rebound in front of the world on ESPN against the undefeated Mavericks in the start of the NBA's in-season tournament. We'll see what the approach is for both teams and the league. I'm just curious in the first year that they're doing this. So we will leave it there for now, guys. Nuggets lost their first game. It took to their 5th opportunity to get there. They're 4-1 after 5. You still got to feel great about who this team is, and I think they'll bounce back in a big way against the Dallas Mavericks on Friday night. And whatever happens on Friday night and over the weekend, guys, early next week, we'll be back talking about it right here on the Mile High Hoops podcast.